Your movie today is a little western called The Last of the Wild Horses that I like to think smells like the inside of John Goodman's chaps. Yippee-di-I-A.
Shut up.
This time we watched Season 6, Episode 11, Last of the Wild Horses.
It's another Western, folks, with another hero guy that's going to save us all and our horses.
But first, we've got a little bit of follow-up. This episode's coming out a bit later than we thought it was going to originally, just like our previous episode came out a bit later than we thought it would originally. And that's because I've got a wrist thing going on right now.
I heard about it. What do you want to share with our listeners about your wrist thing?
It's not actually a wrist thing. Well, it's sort of a thumb thing more. It's called, for those of you who are into this kind of detail, de Quervain's tenosynovitis.
That sounds very official, Chris.
It sure does. I've got a little thing that my doctor gave me here that he printed off the internet, so you know it's good.
Oh, whenever I get a doctor's report, if I don't have some sort of explanation that looks like it's from WebMD, how do I know he's really a doctor? Or she.
So, and I use a trackpad, or used to use a trackpad to edit these things, and it required a lot of pressing down with the thumb while I drag things and blah, 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 blah. I ordered myself a little trackball as a replacement because I thought it might be better. And I ordered it from a big bad company that promised to deliver things very quickly. You know the one.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't love that company, but they promised to get it to me very quickly. And listeners, they did not. They promised it would be there the next morning, and then a few days later, they were like, yeah, no, we totally couldn't deliver this. And I dug into it and found out that one of the reasons that they might have had trouble delivering it was that they were trying to deliver it in Edmonton.
Oh, but you don't live in Edmonton, Chris.
No, I live a couple of time zones away from Edmonton. It's true. So that wasn't going to work out.
Edmonton's kind of in the middle between you and I, right?
Yeah, a little closer to you, but yeah, absolutely.
They were averaging really badly between the two of us to deliver your thing.
To be honest, I hadn't even mentioned you in the order, but...
But Big Box Company is always listening.
Then they said they were going to try it again, and this time it ended up in Calgary. It was ridiculous. So I finally did go to a local big box store, which is, slightly better maybe for the world. Oh.
At least it's local.
And I got to try out the different mices, and I picked a different one that was even better for me. So, and
nice.
It's been working. I was able to finally get out Gunslinger. So that's nice. And I am slowly healing.
Yeah, people had to wait a really long time to hear our thoughts on Beverly Garland as a sheriff.
Even though they were kind of obvious, she's awesome.
What else were we going to say? But it's good to confirm what everybody thought was going to happen. Sometimes that's the most comforting thing of all.
Exactly. With the possible exception of watching another Western.
I was excited to watch another Western, and then I thought, oh my gosh, Last of the Wild Horses, does that mean that somehow we're going to lose all the horses? And I got really sad because you know I cried when I watched the movie Hidalgo, so.
And presumably The Last Unicorn made you cry?
Oh, duh, of course it did. Good Lord. That movie makes everybody cry. It would make Jason Momoa cry.
So, imagine a Western that was about all of these unicorns roaming free, and then all of them die at the end, and that would be the saddest thing.
Quite honestly, the horses don't even have to die. Just the thought that there's horses roaming free without our interference. Oh, I'm tearing up already.
All right. Well, let's see if we can make it through the submarines.
This time, we watched Season 6, Episode 11, Last of the Wild Horses. Duke Barnum has a real hard time making up his mind. Why, he's not sure if he's a good guy or a bad guy. He wears a white hat, but he has a black kerchief. He gets ready to rob a stagecoach, and then he sees a guy being chased by 3 others and decides to intervene to help. When one of those 3 guys shoots at him, he doesn't kill him in typical Old West style. Instead, he releases their horses, steals their boots. This guy is such a mixed bag. But Duke is our hero, a lone man making his way in the Old West. Newly part of a small family-run ranch, he begins to mediate the disputes of all the ranchers in the valley. See, all the ranches in the area take mares from a wild herd of horses, but no ranch as much as the Double C, owned by the very wealthy and powerful Charlie Cooper. If everyone keeps stealing from the herd at the current rate, soon it will be the last of the wild horses. And no one wants to see that. Wink. Duke gets everyone to agree to stop taking horses from the herd for a year, allowing the population to rebound. But the Double C Ranch has a problem. And it's not super stubborn Charlie Cooper or his daughter. It's the next in command, Riley Morgan. Riley is not content to just be a head ranch hand. He has a plan to take over all the wealth in the valley, and it involves turning the ranchers against each other. He's devious. He has his henchmen steal horses from the herd and plant evidence that the Double C is going against their word to stop. Tensions build between the smaller ranches and the Double C. Riley convinces the sheriff to deputize a bunch of ranch hands at the Double C so he can use the law against the rebellious small ranchers. Now, Riley kills and steals with impunity and makes it look like Cooper is the one to blame. This turns all the other ranchers into a vicious mob against Charlie Cooper. Duke, our hero, calms this mob down. But how long can this tentative peace last? Well, until Cooper's found dead, and Duke is framed for it. That's how long. It's a tangled web this Riley has made, and Duke is smack in the middle of it. Duke's only allies are the folks he was working for at that small ranch, and they're mostly there for comic relief. Riley's even fixed it so Jane Cooper, Charlie's daughter, doubts Duke's innocence, even though she has the hots for him, because, of course she does. You know how this'll turn out. Duke's gonna escape his imprisonment and look for a way to expose Riley's selfish machinations. Duke will be discovered, he and Riley will have a super big fist fight, and Duke will win. Duke's innocence will be proven, and everything will be fine with the town, the ranches, and the wild horses. I don't think we've seen the last of those. After all, they have to show up in Hidalgo with Viggo Mortensen soon. The end.
Meanwhile, on the Satellite of Love, Mike has, let's say, limited skill with robotics, but he's managed to program Tom and Crow to speak with regional dialects. Is root beer a kind of Coke? If we go to see a movie, are we going to see a show? Such differences will hopefully confuse them and amuse us. Irregardless, Mike finds a few of the regionalisms to be a step too far. Down on Deep 13, Dr. Forrester sends a matter transference device up to the Satellite of Love through the umbilicus. Remember the umbilicus? That long tube that tethered the Satellite of Love to Earth? Anyway, they send up the matter transference device, but looks like there was an ion storm happening. And you know what that means? We're entering the multiverse. So now, Frank and Forrester are on the Satellite of Love, and Evil Mike and Evil Crow are in Deep 13. You can tell Mike is evil because he's got a goatee. And also, he wants to punish Crow with Crow's agonizer. Crow hasn't been keeping his agonizer charged, though, so, oh well. Tom and GPC are watching all this, and GPC is panicked. Why, they must be in an evil parallel dimension. Tom hasn't really noticed any difference. Anywho, Mike sends them the movie, and Frank and Forrester enter the theater to do some riffing. And after the break, Frank brings out Joey the Lemur, and they sing that classic. Tom and GPC are horrified. There are no lemurs in this movie. Anyway, then we switch back to the normal Satellite of Love, but with Evil Tom. The three of them riff the next part of the movie, and then Evil Tom and Evil GPC have an intense scene where GPC tries to instill Tom with a confidence to kill using a slinky dress and a va-va-va-voom attitude. I will be a captain's woman, she says. And then at the next break, Mike tries to read the alternate universe manual while evil Tom plots to kill him and take his power, such as it is. Cut back to the other dimension where Frank is still doing Joey the Lemur and evil Crow is attacking evil Mike. Tom starts talking to a computer because these evil dimensions always have voice-activated computers. This one sounds like Torgo, and it explains how to undo the dimension swapping. Just get Frank and Forrester to send back the matter transference doohickey, which they happily agree to do. Everything's back to normal, except now Deep 13 has an agony booth, which Dr. F and TV's Frank rush to try out. Well, that was confusing, so Mike tries to explain what just happened to the bots. And then Frank and Forrester, from the other dimension, call through the Hexfield view screen. And they start singing Joey the Lemur again. Well, sadly, Mike has to stop them so he can read a letter from Hawaii. And then we cut to the Mads and their cries of agony? Maybe ask the kids to go to the kitchen and get you a Coke for that scene. What do you think, sirs?
I had no idea that MST3K had broached the multiverse so many years before the Marvel people did. Or at least in the movies.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the standout thing about this episode is that you get to see Frank and Forrester in the theater.
So cool. Although I just didn't think that Dr. F's hair would silhouette that way.
Really?
I know. It was just, I don't know. I thought it would be a little bit more transparent, but I bet it was kind of like Tom's head when Tom's head was transparent and it just looked weird.
Yeah. I mean, you can't really make it transparent with the Shadowrama effect, so it's either there or it isn't.
It's such a shame, though. I thought it would be more wispy. I don't know.
Fair enough. It's also another Western, this one brought to us by the director, Robert Lippert, who was responsible as a producer for many of the season 2 episodes, especially Rocket Ship XM, Jungle Goddess, Lost Continent, King Dinosaur, that kind of stuff. He also did Radar Secret Service from season 5.
Geez, so he's like a familiar face in production?
Yeah, that's why they know the Albert Glasser music so well, and why they're so unenthusiastic to be pummeled by it again.
The one that holds you down and pounds you with sound?
Exactly.
That was such a good riff.
This is the only movie that Lippert directed.
Oh, it's not a terrible movie. It's fine. It's a fine Western.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, a shame about the audio quality, which is not the most audible, but also not the worst we've ever had. So.
Yes, so on the spectrum of bad, it's pretty good.
But it's an interesting little Western with a tale about the tragedy of the commons, right? And about how powerful interests accrue even more power through less scrupulous methods, especially when it's sort of behind the authority of a figurehead old man who, oh God, I don't want to think about this right now. Okay.
Yeah, seriously, especially when he has the law on his side. That's just not even fair.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
So it's interesting. It's interesting that it's like pulling on those threads. It's a weirdly anti-capitalist movie.
Sort of? I don't know. It feels anti-capitalist in that they want to be able to spread opportunity around to everybody. Like everybody needs to have access to this natural resource, which is, horses.
Horses.
But at the same time, they're all just exploiting a natural resource for their own benefit. So I don't know. And not necessarily a renewable one. I'm just going to say it like horses gestate longer than humans, and 1 year is not going to be enough to totally rebuild the herd. I don't know what Duke was thinking.
No, I'm not going to give this movie a pass in terms of its politics entirely, or its understanding of
and understanding.
ecology.
Yes, exactly. Biology is separate from everything that happens in the Old West.
But, at least there was that. At least there was something to it. I don't know. It's fine.
It was fine. We got to have a stagecoach robbery almost. We got to have a gunfight almost. We didn't really have one of those. Instead, they just fist fighted a lot. It was like Commando Cody in that way.
Yeah, just like what we wanted.
Which everyone knows is like my favorite. It's a Western, but in the Old West, and Commando Cody's a Western in space.
Yeah. Did you enjoy the episode otherwise?
I have a mixed bag reaction to it. I really enjoyed seeing Frank and Trace inside of the theater riffing. Like, the flavor of the riffing while they were in there was so different from the Mike and the Bots flavor, and I really appreciated it.
Yeah. I mean, even though it's the same writing crew, right? Like,
Yeah, but they have different characters. I don't know, maybe Mike would have made all of the, like foot fetishists of the Old West riffs. But I loved those.
one of them would have for sure.
It was phenomenal. I really enjoyed that coming from Frank. I mean, and it seems so appropriate coming from the character of TV's Frank.
Oh, yeah. No, it definitely felt like it was in their voice, which is a treat. And of course, getting to see all the little changes in costume and set was a delight. I loved that when they're in the evil universe, so to speak, when Forrester and Frank are on the satellite of love, they've changed the iconography around, right? So instead of having the big G for Gizmonics behind them on the door, it's got the big Deep 13 triangle, which is also on their badges, which is also on the movie sign button thing.
So awesome. It's great attention to detail.
Similarly, all of the evil versions of Mike and Tom and Crow and GPC, they all have these like buttons with a little earth with the satellite of love sort of sticking through it.
Oh, but you know that they're just stealing that from the Star Trek episode.
Oh, well, we'll talk about that in a bit, but
Okay.
It felt like their variation on the Deep 13 logo as well. I don't know. I thought it was really clever that they actually changed the door. Was amazing.
Yes. It's a really thoughtful way to really present an actual alternate universe and not just a, repositioning of characters, right? They're not just switching places. It's actually a totally different place, but at the same time.
So yeah, good work.
Mm-hmm. It was lots of fun. I also have to say, I had a really hard time getting my courage to watch the episode. And I don't know if it's just because of recent politics and things like this, but there are things that we've come to expect from riffing from Mike, really bad riffs about women inside of the movie, and usually some sort of homophobic comments as well. And I could not bring myself to watch the episode for a really long time for some reason. And I this is on me. I totally understand the comedy at the time that this was coming out very much made comments like that typical, if not okay. But it was really hard for me just to sit down and be like, I'm going to watch this episode. There will be riffs that are good because there always are. But Mike and the Bots were not in the theater 1 minute before they had a no homo moment, and it was just I can't deal with that right now, which is on me. But it made it really hard to come to the episode with an open mind.
Fair enough. I think that particular no homo moment was a relatively okay one and positive one in terms of how they were playing it out. It was not as ugly as some of the later ones, especially in the sci-fi years, would get. But so it goes.
No, but it definitely had that, I have this feeling like he's going to do this thing and I'm dreading when it comes. And then it was right there. And it was unfortunate because, again, it was not I don't believe that to be an atypical joke for the time that this episode came out.
Sure.
But it doesn't hit the same anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. We still have more Mike episodes to get through, however. So.
I'm going to be fine. I think it was just a matter of I blew it up in my mind so much before watching the episode. And if I hadn't done that, I would have been able to watch the episode weeks ago. But fortunately, your wrist gave me time to amplify it in my mind and make it so much worse.
So I figured we would start off our topics with a few mini topics, a little mini topic roundup. Yeah!
That totally seems like it should have a jingle.
Oh, God, no. I'll never get the episode out.
It's my job to torture you with the suggestion of jingles. I got my familiar faces one. I'm so excited.
All right. Well, first up, as we mentioned, there is a certain episode of Star Trek that even I, somebody who does not watch much Star Trek and certainly has never watched the original series, not the TV show. I have seen some of the movies. I know what they're referencing, and I even knew it back then.
Good work, Chris. When I first watched it, I didn't realize how deep they went in the references to the Mirror Mirror episode of Star Trek, though, the original series.
I mean, it's mostly because he's got a goatee like evil Spock, right?
So he has a goatee like evil Spock. The gold vest thing that he's wearing is a costume from the Mirror Mirror episode that Captain Kirk wears. The agonizer that's on the belt that he attempts to punish Crow with, that's from the episode of Mirror Mirror. The agony room is from the episode of Mirror Mirror. GPC being all, I will be a captain's woman, is from the Mirror Mirror episode. There's a female character inside of the alternate universe in that Star Trek episode who is Captain Kirk's girlfriend type character.
Evil Kirk's girlfriend.
Evil Kirk's girlfriend.
Right,
and
okay.
she is his girlfriend in an attempt to be wife of a Caesar.
Right.
Because Kirk is like super ambitious and is trying to make his way up the entire, food chain of the Republic or whatever the heck it is. Anyway, she's there and she's like, I have been used to being a captain's woman. And if you're dumping me, then I am going to try out every single captain in Starfleet until I find my next one, because I am going to be a captain's woman. And
Amazing.
It's like so weird. Yeah, but I mean, even just down to the medals that are on their uniforms, like there are similar medals on the evil Kirk and evil Crew's costumes. It's amazing.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I did not realize how much they were borrowing from this Mirror Mirror episode until I watched the Mirror Mirror episode and then rewatched Last of the Wild Horses.
All right, excellent. Okay, next mini topic. Hey, we've got some non-traditional riffers in the theater. People who don't normally get to go into the theater are in the theater.
It's so cool. As I said before, I really like the Trace and Frank inside of there.
It's kind of always great whenever other people end up in the theater. I don't know. I think of, GPC joins for a little bit at the beginning of Hercules before she finds it really boring and has to leave.
She has work to do.
She has work to do, I suppose. But, it's a great appearance and it's a great excuse to get her out of there. It's just delightful.
Yeah, it's nice to shake up the routine. It makes you appreciate the routine, but it also gives you another perspective. So it's great.
Pearl will later join the bots for Quest of the Delta Knights, which we've done an episode on, and that was pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess technically Mike's brother Eddie joins in Time Chasers, but that's also played by Mike, so that's not such a big thing.
It's not really different.
And in the newer seasons, they've sort of realized, especially in season 13, that you can do this in the shorts really effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about The Bicycle Driver, which had Pearl and Cynthia and Mega Cynthia.
Yes.
But they also got Kinga and Max in to riff Mr. B Natural, and Dr. Earhart and Pearl do Cavalcade in season 13.
Ooh.
So those are all great.
Yes.
I have fond thoughts about all of those moments, which is weird, but it's still true.
It's phenomenal, though, because season 13 is the season where you have all of these different hosts with their set of bots that get to go into the theater with them. But you also have so many different configurations of the mad scientists going into the theater as well. So everybody gets a turn being the people who are talking back to the movie. It's so great.
Exactly. And at the end of the Christmas Dragon, the final episode, you get to see Joel and Emily and Jonah in the theater together too. And that's also really cool. And, when we were originally planning to release this episode, it was really well timed because the Mads had come out with another episode of their riffing thing, which they used to do monthly. Then they, had done that for about 4 years and they stopped and now they're doing it just occasionally, but they just did one.
It was their springtime shorts episode, right?
Yeah, it was yet another night of shorts, which is always a fun thing.
Mm-hmm.
They had Kevin McDonald from Kids in the Hall as special guest, which was delightful.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. Love Kids in the Hall.
Kevin McDonald loves to tell a story, and then he loves to start telling another story before he's even gotten very far into the first one. And that's great. He had a wonderful energy to watch.
Mm-hmm. He was lots of fun to see on that. Although, like, I was thinking of him inside of the Outcast video for Roses when I was watching it. Like,
wait, what?
The band Outcast has a song called Roses, and Kevin McDonald is in the video for it. And so now when I see Kevin McDonald, I think of Kids in the Hall, but I also think of Roses.
I did not know that. I'll have to check that.
Oh, you totally do.
Out.
He's principal of a high school. He's great at it.
Oh, good. So they did 4 shorts over the course of, about an hour or so. And one of them would be familiar to people who watch MST3K because it's Century 21 Calling, which they did in The Space Children in season 9, an episode we have not done yet. We will do it soon enough, so you'll get to talk all about the 1962 World's Fair in Seattle.
So exciting, yes.
And all of the fun things that AT&T are going to bring to us.
It's going to change our world. I just know it.
Well, the narrator at one point goes, bringing together all people in a new era of understanding. And Frank went, yeah, that didn't happen.
He's not wrong.
It had 3 other shorts, one of which is a Cornet film called Benefits of Looking Ahead.
It felt very much like the short that they do where they have the 2 kids in woodshop class talking to each other.
Yeah, I think it might be the same kid. That's also a Cornet film. He did a few of them. I think he might be in a few of them. I think his name might be Robert Casey, but IMDb was not helping me out, and I didn't decide to spend much more time than that to figure this out.
I think that's fair. But it's all about the, like, let's make a plan to be the kind of person we want to be, just like we would make a plan to make a table at woodshop class.
Exactly.
Neat.
But, like, the main character has this, like, way of talking that makes him sound like thinking is not his favorite thing to do.
It's so true.
And I don't know. That doesn't mean anything about the person, but like that's the character he's playing. But like that weird way of talking shows up in several of these films, it feels like. So they did a short called About Fallout that the Department of Defense put out in 1963, explaining how radiation is a totally natural and normal thing, and that if nuclear fallout happens, we'll basically be fine.
Yes, we'll just have to wash our fruit. It's going to be fine, everyone.
What are you going to do?
I don't know, but it was definitely a little depressing. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I think it was a more politically spicy short than they would normally do on MST3K, but
not because of the short, but because of the riffs that they were doing in reaction to the short.
The short was actually quite, like, the short is explicitly about nuclear war happening and what we're going to do. It's like, ay.
Sure, it was very much like pro-government having a plan, but it wasn't political in the sense of representing a specific party.
No, it wasn't partisan. No.
That was what I was understanding when you said political, because in this day and age in America, it's hard to separate those two ideas.
Fair enough. The other film that they did, which was my favorite of the night, is a film called Jay Can Do It.
Yeah, the one where Frank was sit-bending the whole time being like, and what's this short even about?
And Trace says, it's about Jay. Like, yeah, it is. It follows this 11-year-old kid going about his day, being helpful to his family, and it's real slow. It's got like this Mr. Rogers pace, and none of the scenes connect to each other, and it's kind of nice. I don't know.
It's okay. I don't know.
So it was made by a company called Frith Films, run by Emily Frith, who made films for preschoolers and primary school kids. Came out in 1965.
No wonder why it was very Fred Rogers.
Yeah, and it had this like incredibly slow pace to it that like some older children's media had, and I don't feel like very much has today.
No, very much not.
Like, I also think about The Clangers, the UK kids show from back in the day, which, if you watch it, I didn't grow up with it, but, like, if you watch it, it's pretty slow-paced in a way that's not a problem, right?
Huh, I don't think I've ever watched The Clangers.
It's worth checking out. I'll say that. Like, it's a kid's show, but it's pretty delightful, and it was beloved by people who grew up with it, and I totally get why.
Well, I love Mr. Rogers, so if there's a UK with kid show with the same sort of pacing and vibe.
It's even slower than Mr. Rogers is in many ways. Anyway, it was delightful to get to see them riff. And when I watched them riffing and then watched Last of the Wild Horses, it was like, yep, it's the same vibe.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yes. They have such a good rapport, the two of them together. At the very beginning of the movie, Chris, they let us know very helpfully that the entire movie was filmed in Jacksonville, Oregon, or in the Rogue River Valley. And it made me think about, I've never been to Jacksonville. I don't even know if I've ever seen a highway sign for it, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about Jacksonville. But here's the deal. We were like 30 minutes away from it when you and I were in Ashland, Oregon together.
Yeah, I've spent some time in that part of Oregon, I suppose, mostly with you, mostly in Ashland, which is like a little college town with a Shakespeare festival in the summer. But I never made any little trips into the towns nearby. I never went to Medford. I never went to Klamath Falls, which we've mentioned in the show before.
You went through Medford, though.
The highway went through Medford.
Yes.
I probably got out to take a tinkle at some point, but
Sure.
but my understanding is that Jacksonville's like a little off the highway to the west from Medford.
And I assumed, gosh, it's got to be like pretty far off of the highway because otherwise, why would we never have even seen a sign for it? It's only like 8 minutes off of the highway from Medford. It's like really close.
So you have no excuse not to go there now.
I know. Well, except that now, like in Portland, it's a 5-hour drive away. So it's not like it's close to where I am now. But it also looks like an adorable little town.
Yeah. Did you look up the history of the town to find out why it looks so adorable?
A little bit of the history of Jacksonville, although I have to say, I did look at their Wikipedia page because they say the arts in Jacksonville, lots of really excellent movies were filmed here. They named 3, none of which were The Last of the Wild Horses. So, that's unfortunate. But, it is a very typical Old West town story that it was founded by people who were looking for gold and found it inside of the nearby area. And like it was thriving while people were finding gold. And then when the railroad came through, it didn't go through Jacksonville. It went through a nearby town, and Jacksonville kind of deflated a little bit at that time, but it helped to preserve the original character of the town, because it didn't have all of this high growth due to the railroad coming through. So that's why it has all these historic buildings from like the mid 1800s.
Yeah, and they'd also run out of gold. Is the other
There's
thing.
also
There's
that. Yeah, as all places do eventually, right? If you're mining it like that.
So yeah, the movie makes a big deal about how it's still got that Old West charm to it, which it seems to. And it also looks like it is a place where the stars go to retire.
I guess, yes. I mean, so I always thought Bruce Campbell, the man with the most famous chin in B-acting Hollywood, I always thought he settled in Medford. I didn't realize it's actually in Jacksonville.
I mean, the greater Medford area, but yes.
Oh, I mean, Jacksonville would have you believe it's entirely its own thing, but it's really close.
It is also where Kirstie Alley ended up, although she had a second place somewhere else in California, and where Steve Reeves ended up.
Steve Reeves? No way.
There was only one interesting person listed as being from Jacksonville that I could see, which is Pinto Colvig, who I think we may have mentioned on the show before. He's a vaudevillian, and he was the original voice of Goofy and Pluto and Bluto and Bozo the Clown and Grumpy and Sleepy.
Oh.
Big deal if you're very specifically into a very early segment of Disney history, because he and Walt had a big falling out not long after Snow White. So.
I am sure that that's an interesting story too. Oh, wow. I mean, I feel like Bruce Campbell is probably the more pertinent of everybody on the list, only because if Jacksonville is going for that Old West flavor, you know that Bruce Campbell starred in a show called The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., in which he played an Old West sheriff, and I feel like now I need to go revisit it, because I watched it eons ago, and I have vague memories of how awesome it was. I mean, it was awesome enough that I bought the DVD set.
Oh my.
But it's been years since I watched it. It was only one season. It wasn't like Dr. Quinn Medicine Women that went on forever.
Right. So you're going to make a big trip to Jacksonville?
Sure, and I'm going to knock on Bruce Campbell's door.
I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
Except that when I looked at things to do in Jacksonville, I was underwhelmed by the things that are Old West related. Because, okay, so I'm a member of AAA. This is not an endorsement, but they have a magazine that comes out quarterly or something called Via. And I remember them having an article on Jacksonville not that long ago. And it was what to do if you have 3 days in Jacksonville.
3 days?
3
Wow.
days. I know.
It was Jacksonville, Oregon, not Florida.
Yes. Jacksonville, Oregon.
Okay.
And I know we'll have a link in the show notes so that everybody can read this article about Jacksonville, but like they talk about it, you know, being really close to the airport at Medford. So it's totally doable from no matter where you're coming from. It's a really short drive to get from the airport to Jacksonville. And then you could stay at one of the boutique hotels that have been renovated. You can go to the spa. You can go on a winery tour. There's 7 wineries in the greater Jacksonville area and 3 that have tasting rooms in downtown. There are all of these phenomenal little hotels. Oh, you can get an espresso at the Pony Espresso in downtown.
That's good. I like that.
And they have special things in the holidays. And of course, they have like a big music festival that happens because apparently there's wonderful natural acoustics like they have in Red Rock or something. So I'm just telling you, none of that sounds very Old Westy to me. Not one thing in here is like go on a hay ride, go on a horseback tour, you know, things like that.
Where's the junior rodeo?
Where's the junior rodeo? Well, I mean, if you're going to go to a rodeo in Oregon, you know you're going to the Pendleton Roundup, but maybe Jacksonville area should have one too.
Exactly. Pendleton's hours and hours from
It really is a long way from it's like, you know, cross the state as the crows fly. But yeah, it didn't feel very Old Westy, which was a little disappointing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to look at another city that they mentioned inside of the riffs.
Okay.
Des Moines, Iowa.
Yeah, because they said something about how Jacksonville was very Midwesty of the Old West.
They said that Jacksonville was the Old West, but then they said, now this is more like the Midwest of the Old West.
Right.
Like Des Moines, Iowa, which is very Old Westy, right?
I've never been to Iowa, so I don't know, but I don't think of it as being very Old Westy.
I mean, you know, Des Moines, Iowa is kind of known for being a center of insurance and maybe a little bit like publishing. So that doesn't sound very Old Westy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But when I looked up inside of one of the travel websites, like what to do in Des Moines, the second thing that came up after the art museum was the John Wayne Birthplace and Museum.
Ew.
There is nothing more Old West in the minds of Americans, though, than John Wayne.
I thought it was... Sorry. I said ew because you said that, and then I immediately thought they had like a replica of John Wayne's mother's, you know, that you could go through to re-experience his birthplace.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that would be so extra, Chris. Like my brain is exploding, like totally exploding. I mean, they do have his original house, which they've renovated to.
And his placenta.
Well, I mean.
I'm focusing too much on the birth of his birthplace.
You really are. It's not John Wayne's birth. It's his birthplace.
It's the place where the birth happened.
The place where the house that he grew up in.
Is it his grow-up place or his birthplace now?
I don't know if he was actually born in the house because I haven't actually visited the museum to read his life story. I mean, he was born in 1907. It's entirely possible he was born in the house that he was then raised in, which, by the way, is in Winterset, Iowa. It's like a 30 to 45-minute drive from Des Moines, so it's part of the exciting things to do in Des Moines.
That's not in Des Moines.
No, but it's close. If you were to go to Des Moines would you be willing to drive a half hour to do something? I know if I was in Jacksonville, I'd be willing to drive a half hour to Ashland and see a Shakespeare play. So
Yeah, and I'd stay in Ashland then.
You are so close-minded. I think you're anti-Old West.
I'm anti a half-hour drive to the better place where you'd want to stay.
I don't want to stay in the John Wayne birthplace, especially now since I'm going to be hunting for his placenta as part of the scavenger hunt of Winterset. Like, no thank you. But you do get to learn a lot about, John Wayne. But that's not the only, Old West movie relationship that Des Moines, Iowa has.
Okay.
It's also really close to, Chris, this is a stretch. You got to go with me, though, all right?
All right, I'll take some deep breaths. I'll practice my Lamaze.
Thank you. Des Moines, Iowa is really close to Madison County.
Oh, not the Bridges place.
Madison County is the Bridges place. There was a book, there was a movie. That movie had none other than Clint Eastwood in it. Clint Eastwood directed that movie. If you go to Des Moines, it's so Old West, you can be reminded of Clint Eastwood throughout an entire county. Des Moines is not in Madison County. It's a 30-minute drive away.
So it's Old West adjacent.
Just saying. When I think about which one of these two is going to give me more of an Old West experience, if I'm thinking about it from the point of view of the movie of The Last of the Wild Horses, I think going to the John Wayne Birthplace Museum is going to be the most Old West activity. Certainly more than doing Pilates next to the Pony Espresso.
Well, this is the last of the Western movies that MST3K did that we haven't covered yet, unless they do one in a season 14 that may or may not ever happen.
I mean, it makes sense that there aren't so many Westerns considering it's mystery science theater. So, it's like they should be doing more sci-fi and mystery than Western.
They did no mysteries at all. Maybe one.
I feel like they've missed an opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, even if they haven't, we've gotten to talk about Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot and all of these other mystery main characters. So, they're adjacent enough.
So this is going to be our last real opportunity to properly talk about Westerns. And we talked a little bit about the Old West last time, but Westerns.
So last time when we did an episode about Westerns, you watched a Western. You watched Johnny Guitar with Joan Crawford, which makes it almost not a Western.
Kind of not a Western.
Yeah. Did you watch a Western adjacent to this one as well?
I did. I watched two movies directed by John Ford, which is about as Western as you can get. They mention him in the riffs of both of the episodes. In this one, there's a shot of the landscape, sunrise or something. And, one of them says, Robert Lippert trying to be John Ford.
Oh.
And it's true. John Ford could film a landscape.
Nice.
So the two films of his that I watched, one of them is an incredibly early film of his from 1917.
Ooh, wow. That is early.
It's called Bucking Broadway. And let me give you a little précis of it. I'm not going to say too much about it, but Cheyenne Harry, yeah, that's his name. He's a cowboy from Wyoming, and he falls in love with his boss's daughter, Helen, and then they get engaged. But then a big city guy named Thornton comes to town. She's charmed by him and runs off to New York City with him.
Whoa, okay.
She quickly gets tired of him, though, because you've seen a Hallmark movie. You know how this goes.
I do, yeah. Uh-huh.
So she's sort of stuck with him and hates it and sends a message to Harry to come help. And Harry runs off to New York to rescue her. And a big fight happens at a restaurant at the top of a fancy hotel. And it's a lot of the charm is in that latter part of the film is the fish out of water business of the cowboy in the big city. The big moment at the end of the movie is when Harry calls up a bunch of his cowboy friends who I guess are nearby now, and they come riding down 6th Avenue or something in New York on their horses in 1917.
Nice,
and it's a fun image to see them all galloping along. That's really fun, and also really impressive is that the scenery shots are absolutely beautiful.
Nice. For both the city and the country?
Mostly the country. The city's fine, but we don't get a lot of exterior shots there because that's not where the action is. But let me send you just a still of one of the shots of an immaculately composed landscape.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, that's lovely. You have like the rolling mountains inside of the background. You have the, the wooden fence, but it's not a fence. It's like a country fence with just some logs, essentially. And then you have her and him and the horse nearby. Wow, that's beautiful.
So, like, beautiful landscape, beautiful
Yes.
shot. And also what I think was really interesting about the movie is that it's from 1917. And, like, the Old West ends around 1912 when, like, the last couple states
wow.
become properly
Yeah.
states. So, like,
Yeah.
I'm sure there are earlier Westerns that are happening while, like, technically, in terms of how people tend to periodize it now, the Old West is still going on.
Totally. And there were already those myths going on as well, because you have all of the myths from the settling of California and the moving west that are coming from the early 1800s into the mid 1800s. So, like, there's already a Western mythos going on.
Yeah. So I don't really recommend bucking Broadway too much. I mean, it's got some very pretty shots, and it's fine if you're interested in that sort of thing, but it's not like going to blow your mind. The other movie, however, that I watched, I would recommend to almost anyone. It's called Stagecoach. Stagecoach is from 1939. There is a later remake, but I watched the John Ford one. And it's got a bunch of different people trying to take a stagecoach from Arizona into New Mexico. But, Geronimo, you remember Geronimo? We've talked about him before.
Yeah.
Geronimo and his Apaches are threatening everybody. Oh, no. Yeah. So
Wow. Okay.
they have to go there. And then once they get there, spoiler alert, they do get there, they have some business to attend to. And you've got a real ensemble group of characters, right? You've got a doctor who likes to drink too much. You've got a whiskey salesman who can't keep the doctor off of his whiskey. You've got a rich woman from Virginia who's looking for her husband. You've got the sex worker who's been run out of town by the good folk of the city. You've got John Carradine looking younger than I've ever seen him, but still freaking old.
Yeah.
Playing a guy who's trying to, like, I don't know, protect the rich woman. And you've got a bank owner who's embezzling things. And along the way, they pick up the Ringo Kid, a.k.a. John Wayne.
Whoa! Direct from the birthplace.
Exactly. Well, no, he's been around for a little while. He'd been in a few other movies, but I think this was one of his first really big roles. I'm not 100% sure about that. But that's my sense. He's great in this.
Nice.
I never really understood the appeal of John Wayne outside of a sort of machismo caricature of, like, his greatest hits that I've seen.
Sure.
But he's super compelling in this. And I did not know this. He's got ass for days in this film.
Oh, wow.
Did not see that coming.
No, I didn't either. And I've seen lots of John Wayne movies.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he was just having a good day. Maybe they were some very well-fitting jeans. I can't tell you. He's also, like, playing a fairly nice guy in an interesting way. Like, it's an interesting depiction of a John Wayne form of masculinity because, like, one of his main characterizing features is being nice to the sex worker.
Wow.
And, like, I guess, spoiler, you can see it coming a mile away. They eventually fall in love and blah, blah, blah at the end.
Yeah,
but, like, it is very much a sort of everybody else is being a jerk to you because they know of your history and they know, they think they know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to treat you like a normal person and afford you, like a woman. Like, obviously, you're going to get certain affordances for that. But I'm going to treat you as good as everybody else is treating the rich woman.
Yes.
So, like,
there's a Have Gun Will Travel episode where Paladin does that for a Native American woman who is traveling from her boarding school back to her family. Everybody else inside of the stagecoach is treating her like crap. And Paladin's like, I am going to treat you the same as I would treat anybody else. And, like, that's an amazing thing.
Yeah. And the film's treatment of Native Americans, Stagecoach's treatment of Native Americans is problematic, of course.
Yes.
All Westerns are going to be problematic about Native Americans unless they're being made by and with Native Americans, so to speak. But nevertheless, there are definitely the people who are worse about it, so to speak, and the people who are not complete racists. And, John Wayne's character is definitely not a racist.
So there's some variation in how they talk about Native Americans from the perspective of the characters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, Stagecoach, really great film. You should watch it if you haven't seen it before. I thoroughly recommend it. Obviously, not perfect, but, really interesting.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so interesting because I think of John Wayne as being more the character from like a True Grit, or like from the movie 310 from Yuma, where he's, just like a gnarly character who has like all of this anger and has all of this bravado and is like a sharpshooter and he's dominating the scenes that he's in, because he sounds more like a character from a Louis L'Amour book in what you're describing than in the way I usually think about John Wayne.
Oh, all right. Louis L'Amour. That I have not read a Louis L'Amour book. I've just seen what appear to be miles and miles of Louis L'Amour novels all stacked up. Although I also confuse him with Zane Grey. So I could be thinking of the wrong one.
Maybe, I don't know. Louis L'Amour, I have a feeling like my friend who lived down the street from me, her grandmother had like a whole bookshelf of nothing but Louis L'Amour books inside of her bedroom. Like she was she was also a huge John Wayne fan. She had like a framed picture of John Wayne in Old West gear with the, gun hanging from his hip holster type of thing, over her bed.
Right.
Super fun, right? But I'd never read any Louis L'Amour either. And then we were doing these 2 Westerns in a row. And I thought, well, why not get a couple of them out of the library and see what these things are like,
Yeah. Well, what are they like?
So Louis L'Amour has characters like what you're describing for this John Wayne stagecoach character, where he has all of the skills of gunfighting. Like he is a sharpshooter. He is a fast draw. He is able to protect the people around him and is moral and just and, good to everyone type of thing, but doesn't use those skills unless he absolutely has to, because he knows how the men around him will react to him having skills like that. It will become a situation where all of the other men who naturally are inferior feel the need to in some way impress that they are superior to him in some sort of way, right? Or they have to challenge him because somebody has to be the fastest and the best and all those sorts of things. So like Louis L'Amour has all of these characters where they are like the lone hero who's moving through this Western countryside and then finds their way to a town and is trying to establish themselves there. One of the ones that I read is called Hondo,
which is a movie.
It's also a movie and it stars John Wayne.
Yeah.
But I did not see the movie. I only read the book. And it's one of Louis L'Amour's first full-length books, I believe, that he published. And it's a story about this guy who is traveling. He is a solo traveler. And while he is traveling through a treacherous part of the desert, he runs across a couple of Native Americans who are there and they shoot his horse. And he has to shoot them in retaliation. And he ends up carrying the saddle from his horse as far as he can. And there's this mongrel dog that's following him that he doesn't feed and he doesn't own, but he does because they have like a relation. It's weird. But anyway, he ends up coming along this ranch that this woman is on with her young son, and she's alone because her husband has left to go into town, but she pretends that he's just about to come back, even though like Hondo can tell by how the ranch has been kept up that a man hasn't been there for very long. And over the course of the book, you find out that Hondo lived for a while with one of the local native tribes, that at one point in time he had a native wife while he was living with the tribe, that he learned their ways, right, of living within the desert, what plants you can eat to get water when you were in a place that has no water, like very practical things. And one of the people who are the head of the tribe decides that this woman's son is going to be a blood brother of his, and she needs to find a husband to raise the kid. And Hondo, of course, decides to help. There's a whole thing in the book. He ends up killing her husband, not knowing that it's her husband while he's in town, because it turns out her husband is an awful man. And over the course of the book, essentially, like, the Hondo character becomes a husband, right? Like, the whole book is about him being a loner who doesn't even accept his dog as a companion, right? The dog is just following him, but he doesn't do crap for the dog, right? He doesn't feed it. He doesn't water it. He doesn't protect it. It does its own thing. It just hangs out with him, right? And then by the end of the book, he's become a part of this woman's life. He's become a father to her son, and he is leaving to start a life with her, and it is clear that they are going to become a family and that he loves her, right? And that this is his whole character progression. But he's still very manly. He's still a really good shot. He knows all these things about living off the land. He's able to maneuver the politics of people between cultures. I mean, he has all of these very good skills, but like, that's his progression. It's a flipping romance. It's a romance.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's all about like this sort of ideal dream man showing up and taking care of you when you need it the most.
Yes, but the entire thing's told from his perspective, and that's what makes it more of a romance than a romance, right? Because it's all about him being, and this is the thing that's so baffling to me. I had to put it down a couple of times because he would say things in the voice of the character like, she's all woman.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Well, it means if you weigh her, and then you weigh the woman parts of her, it's equal. You're a math teacher. You should know this.
It's just such a baffling way to just, it's kind of like when you describe the god Eros and you're just like the hottest person ever. And that's all you say. She is all woman.
She's all woman.
Whatever the flip that means, right? And I also got another Louis L'Amour. It's a collection of short stories, and it's read by Willie Nelson. I actually got the audio version of it, but it also has a story where it's not just Willie Nelson telling the story. It's a dramatization that has Willie Nelson as the narrator, but it also has Johnny Cash. And it has Chris Christopherson, and like they were all part of a country band together called like the Highwaymen or something like that.
Right, yes,
like they're all together reading the story together about another Western gentleman very similar to this who comes into a town and finds love. It's a romance. It's all a romance. It just has less sex than a romance novel would have. But otherwise, it's the same.
But even, like, not all romance novels have sex, right? Especially older ones,
sure.
I think. So the reason that I know Louis L'Amour and confuse him with Zane Grey is that my stepmother had a whole shelf full of both of their books.
Okay.
Or a shelf with one and a shelf with whatever. And all she read otherwise were romance novels. So, like, it adds up, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, she had her Louis L'Amour right next to her Johanna Lindsay novels.
Something like that, yeah.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, you could go straight from Hondo to Gentle Rogue at any moment.
If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you want to recommend a Western for us, and we know you do, or if you want to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our email is info@itsjustashow.com, and we're on Blue Sky, and either way, we'd love to hear from you. This show is made possible by listeners like you, and like our randomly selected supporter, Allison. Thank you, Allison. For about $1 an episode, you too can be like Allison and help us research and record this show. You can join us on a friendly Discord, and you can listen to all our superfan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/174.
Chris, we're leaving the Wild West, the Old West. Where are we headed next?
We are headed out for the frontier with Season 2, Episode 11, First Spaceship on Venus.
I would kiss the girl from Venus.
This is going to be our third Episode 11 of a season in a row.
Have you been doing that on purpose?
No, maybe. I don't remember. I set up the order a while ago. It sounds like a thing I do, though.
It does sound like very, very much so.
So let's look forward to that. But until then,
go on home and disappoint your husbands.
Dear sir, your horse has a potentially serious design flaw that could result in explosion and fire. Take it away, Theme Squad.